How's it going, everyone? This is Mitchell Mander here, and welcome to another review of the Pokemon Journey series. We're going to be covering episode 95 in today's review, and it's the return of Cassidy and Biff. Hutch, oh, you get it. Cassidy and Butch. And also Team Rocket, wondering if there's more to life outside of Team Rocket. So how was this episode overall? Well, before I get into the episode review, you guys know the drill. If you're new to the channel, you like this type of content, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It'd be pretty awesome if you would do that. So not gonna lie, this episode is gonna be kind of tricky to review because this episode is kind of all over the place, so if this review ends up being kind of a mess, I apologize in advance, but I'm kind of trying my best here. So apparently this episode starts out with a flash forward scene in which Jesse and Wobbuffet collapse in the desert, seemingly dying. Kind of a grim beginning to this episode, but the actual plot in this episode takes place a week earlier, in which Team Rocket are actually working at their part-time job in Vermilion City. It looks like they're at like a toy factory or something like that. They're putting like Pokemon toys together, and they're doing this because they're running out of their budget. They just keep failing their missions, so they got to find other means of income. It looks like they're working in factories now. So as they're leaving work for the day, they actually stumble across Pikachu, very coincidentally, right outside of their work, and Ashigo are nearby. So they summon their gotcha machine, they pull out a Slacking and a Slack Off, but they end up loafing off, so they don't really contribute anything, so they end up getting blasted off. Now understandably, Team Rocket is getting pretty frustrated considering the gotcha machine is just giving them a lot of bad pulls. Sometimes it gives them some good pulls, but mostly bad. So they decide to head out to wherever the gotcha machine is coming from. So they go to follow Pelipper. And they follow Pelipper for seemingly a long time, wherever they're at. Not really certain, but they're over the sea. And that's when a random Swabble actually shows up and starts pecking up the Meowth balloon. So they try to capture it, but it ends up getting angry and it destroys the balloon and they plunge into the sea. But luckily they're safe until a Wailord shows up and literally eats them all. And I have to say, this Wailord, it literally has a pretty big appetite because it actually ate an entire boat, and there's actually a Chatot in here. Like, really? Is this Wailord just eating whatever it wants? But anyways, they end up escaping after trying to forcibly take the gotcha machine out of Pelipper's mouth. And yeah, they end up escaping, but they're pretty much in the middle of nowhere, in basically a freezing area. And they try to follow Pelipper again, but eventually they collapse due to it being, extremely cold weather wherever they're at. I'm honestly not really sure where Team Rocket is even at this point. They're in a very snowy area, so are they in the Sinnoh region, near Snow Point City? No idea. But luckily for them, they were actually rescued. They're in a nearby cafe, which is run by none other than Cassidy, who is revealed to have left Team Rocket, as she's running this cafe and doing some wood carving on the side. As she explains to them, there's more than life than being part of Team Rocket, because she was getting tired of all the missions and the failures and the lectures that she got, so she decided to quit, along with Butch, of course. But it seems like they've gone their separate ways, and he's somewhere else, and she's running this cafe. So they decide to repay her since she essentially saved their lives, so they help out at the cafe. It seems like James is enjoying his time there, so they basically abandon him and leave him there. Because he enjoys it, there's more to life outside of Team Rocket, so they bid farewell to James and just take off, because they gotta follow Pelipper and figure out where he's getting those gotcha Pokemon. Now, I'm not exactly sure where Jesse, Meowth, and Wobbuffet are at this point. It's no longer snowy where they're at, but they seem to be near the ocean and they're hungry. There's a nearby bakery, so they head over there. And it's run by none other than Biff. Hutch. It's Butch. Yeah, he happens to be running this bakery, and he's also a former member of Team Rocket now, having left for literally the same reason as Cassidy. To the point where, you don't have to explain it to us. We already know. We already ran the Cassidy. And there happens to be a Meowth that looks like Meowsy. It's not Meowsy, but it's a Meowth that resembles Meowsy. So Meowth is once again in love. So they decide to repay back Butch over here since he actually gave them some free food. So they help out at the bakery for a little while. And just like they did with James, Jesse and Wobbuffet end up leaving Meowth behind because there's more to life than Team Rocket, and Meowth is in love with this new Meowth. So they literally leave Meowth behind now. So apparently with Meowth gone, Jesse has a Wobbuffet balloon. And literally the same thing that happened earlier happens. As they're chasing after Pelipper, there's a Swabble that's biting on the balloon, so they try to catch it. It blows up the balloon, and it somehow shoots them to a desert. And this meets up with the very start of the episode where Jesse and Wobbuffet end up collapsing in the desert. Yeah, this episode is going all over the place. Anywho, Jesse ends up waking up, and it seems like James and Meowth have returned to save her. Unfortunately, she's daydreaming. It's actually a Sandshrew that was actually attacking her. And then her and Wobbuffet end up getting sucked into a sand pit with a trap pitch basically bringing them in. And it seems like they're really done for this time, but surprise, surprise, James and Meowth actually show up to rescue them. Yeah, I'm not really certain how they figured out where Jesse and Wobbuffet were at, but they're here. And it turns out that James got kicked out of Cassidy's cafe because Morpeku was getting hangry again and eating everything in sight, so she booted him out. Meowth, on the other hand, was in love with that Meowth that's at Butch's bakery, but it turns out that it's in love with a person in that town. So Meowth was once again heartbroken, so he left, ended up stumbling across James, who was chasing after Pelipper, and somehow they ended up here. And they end up falling into the sand pit as well. So it's up to Pelipper to save them, which it's got the gotcha machine in its mouth, and at first it's unwilling to help them out, but it ends up shooting out that gotcha machine and hits the trap pitch and actually ends up saving all of them. Now, I don't think the gotcha machine was destroyed here. I'm pretty sure Pelipper probably went back in and got it. So I might be wrong here. I'm pretty sure I'm right that the gotcha machine is still going to be a thing. They probably could make another one anyway. So there's a lot of people on social media I noticed that were actually kind of excited about the gotcha machine being destroyed. But I wouldn't get your hopes up. I'm pretty sure the gotcha machine is fine. But anyways, Ash, Go, and Pikachu conveniently show up, blast Team Rocket off, and they also conveniently land in the factory that they've been working at, as the episode literally comes to an end just like that. So I gotta say, guys, I'm extremely mixed with this episode. This has got to be one of the most mixed I've felt on a Journeys episode, because on one hand, some of the Team Rocket moments were really nice, but there's a lot of issues in this episode. The pacing issues in this episode were all over the place. The first part of this episode, it was really slow paced. I felt like they wasted a lot of time in the beginning of this episode. And then we get to Cassidy and Butch, and they're literally on screen for like a minute. Butch got even worse than Cassidy, as he had even less screen time than she had. And it just felt like they came back for their gags and just to give some extra exposition to Team Rocket possibly thinking about leaving like they did. So, in my opinion, Cassidy and Butch's return to the series was very underwhelming. Like, on one hand, it's really cool that we got some closure with them. Like, we know what happened to them. They're no longer part of Team Rocket. So, essentially, if they wanted to close off their characters here, they could. But I feel like they could have done a much better send-off, in my opinion. Because, I mean, we got what they're up to now, which is cool, but we didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time with them. I was expecting them to have more presence in this episode. So, I'm let down there as well. But at the same time, some of the Team Rocket moments were really nice. And, like, again, I'm mixed here. And I know I'm kind of just going all over the place. This episode was literally all over the place. Because on one hand, some of the moments were really nice, but they were very short-lived, and there wasn't really enough time to just absorb it all. Like, they leave James behind. They don't get, like, an emotional send-off. It's very quick. Jesse ends up running off crying. But that's about it. And the same with Meowth. It's just so quick. It's obvious that they're not separating. They're eventually going to reunite in this episode, and that's going to be that. But once again, this is another example of Journeys and its poor pacing. Another example of another like story that could have been developed into 2 episodes. There's so many times in Journeys where there are episodes that feel like they should be longer, like there should be more developed here. Like, it just feels like a lot of these episodes end too quickly, to the point where, like, by the time it ends, you just wish you want more from the episode, and it ultimately doesn't deliver. Like, this is not every single episode of Journeys, but there's a lot of episodes that just feel like they should be longer. Now, maybe this is just me getting my expectations set too high going into this episode, but if Journeys is indeed the final Pokemon series, then I definitely want to see some closure for Team Rocket, and this would be a perfect episode to plant those seeds for Jessie, James, Meowth, and Wobbuffet to eventually leave Team Rocket, especially bringing back Cassidy and Butch, who have since left Team Rocket, and even in the episode, they basically were planting those seeds, but it ultimately didn't mean anything in the end. So, yeah, in that regard, I'm a little bit let down too, because this could have actually been a really nice episode if they didn't waste so much time in the beginning of this episode. Like, cut out a lot of stuff at the beginning of this episode, and then have Cassidy and Butch be at the same cafe/bakery, whatever they wanted to do with that. Because them being separated, that's also another issue that also complicates this episode as well. Why not have both of them work at the cafe/bakery? And then we spend some time with them. Because in this episode, we barely got to spend a whole lot of time with them at all. We just basically moved on. After we saw Cassidy, we moved on. Saw Butch for a little bit, moved on from there, and that was it. That was the end of their role in this episode. Maybe we could spend almost half the episode with them, and then maybe it's them thinking, hey, maybe I should leave Team Rocket. And then they come up with some way to get away from this, like Morpeko showing up and eating all the food or something like that. And then they get kicked out that way. But maybe plant the seeds here and then develop it as it goes on. Like, as we carry on in Journeys, maybe this is something that they think about as time goes on until eventually they decide, screw it, we're done with Team Rocket, we're just going to live our lives. I don't know. I mean, some people might disagree with me, but I definitely want to see Team Rocket, Jessie, James, and Meowth, and Wobbuffet eventually leaving Team Rocket and having some closure. I don't want them to be chasing Pikachu forever. I know that that's been their characters this entire time. It's their gag. They always get blasted off and stuff, but I love Team Rocket. I've been watching them since the very beginning, and I want to see some proper closure for these characters. I just don't want them to stay stagnant forever. And this could have been a good episode to progress them, but I really feel like we didn't get any development. Like, they thought about it in this episode, but ultimately they just came back to Team Rocket, and it's the same old, so. Yeah, maybe, again, my expectations were a little bit too high here, but I was hoping for a little bit more in this episode. Definitely should have had some more Cassidy and Butch screen time, because that's probably the biggest fault this episode had, is that they advertised them returning this episode. Obviously, it was a Team Rocket focus episode anyways, but they were coming back, and their return was reduced to like a minute of screen time. Yeah. But not everything is negative here. Like I said, there's some genuinely nice moments, even if they're brief. They're pretty nice and wholesome moments for Team Rocket. Also, it was pretty nice that Pelipper actually, despite the fact that Team Rocket were basically messing with it the whole entire episode, it chose to save them. That was pretty cool. Also, the music choice in this episode were excellent. Like, they played Meowth's Ballad. That was awesome. I haven't heard that since frickin' X and Y. So that's cool. And then they also played the Team Rocket theme. So yeah, there's some positives here, but yeah, the plot of this episode, it's a gigantic mess. Alrighty guys, that's all I got for today's episode review. So a mixed bag of an episode. Right now I'm feeling like this episode deserves a 4 out of 10. Maybe I'll watch it at a later date, maybe I'll enjoy it more or less. But right now, a 4 out of 10 sounds appropriate for how I feel about this episode. And in the comment section down below, post your thoughts, whether you liked this episode or hated this episode, whether you agree or disagree with my takes. As long as you respect my opinion, I'll respect yours. So yeah. If you're new to the channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And have a great day or night wherever you're at. And if you got Pokemon Legends Arceus, post that in the comment section down below. Don't spoil anything, because I'm still waiting for my copy of the game. FedEx apparently screwed up, and I'm literally waiting for my copy still, which sucks, but, you know, whatever. I'll play it eventually when it eventually shows up at my door. I actually probably should go and check to see if it's arrived already or not. I haven't checked in a little bit, so maybe I have got it. We'll see. Anyways, guys, that's all I got, so I'll talk to you all later. Have a good day or night wherever you're at, and peace.